Have you ever sat quietly in a crowded room, surrounded by conversation, warmth, and laughter, yet felt completely detached from everything happening around you? You look at the people talking, you hear the music playing, but it feels like there is an invisible wall of glass between you and the rest of the world. Or maybe you have experienced that heavy, quiet moment sitting alone in your car after a long afternoon, staring blankly at the dashboard. You look around at the life you built, the job, the routine, the obligations, the quiet accomplishments, and a sudden, unsettling question whispers from the back of your mind. Why does none of this feel like mine anymore? Why does the life I worked so hard to create feel like a coat that no longer fits? When this feeling settles over us, we naturally look for a word to describe the ache. We call it being lost. We tell ourselves that we took a wrong turn along the way, that somewhere in our past we misplaced our direction, our passion, or our sense of purpose. We look at other people walking past us with clear eyes and confident steps, and we wonder what secret they know that we somehow missed. We turn into searchers. We search for answers in new habits, in busier schedules, in new goals, or in the validation of others, hoping that if we just keep moving, we will eventually stumble back onto the right path. But what if that entire premise is wrong? What if the ache in your chest is not evidence that you are lost at all? What if you are not lost, but simply disconnected from the person living inside your own skin? Think about what it really means to be lost. To be lost implies that your true destination is out there somewhere, hidden in the fog, waiting for you to discover it in the outside world. It suggests that the answer is far away from where you are standing right now. But disconnection is something entirely different. Disconnection means that the destination, the real, unfiltered, living version of you, never actually left. You didn't lose your path. You simply turned down the volume on your own voice until you couldn't hear it anymore. You didn't lose your soul. You just moved your attention so far outward into the demands, expectations, and noise of the world that you forgot how it feels to inhabit your own heart. You are not a ship drifting endlessly at sea without a compass. You are the compass. But over time, under the weight of trying to survive, trying to please, and trying to keep up, you stopped looking down at the needle. You began looking to everyone else to tell you which way to walk. This realization is both a gentle truth and a quiet relief. It means you do not have to go on an endless quest to find who you are supposed to be. You do not have to reinvent yourself from scratch or search the far corners of the earth for your identity. You only have to stop running long enough to turn your awareness inward. The journey is not about reaching a far-off destination. It is simply about making the conscious, courageous choice to come back to where you have always been. Before we step deeper into this space together today, take a deep, slow breath. Let your shoulders drop away from your ears. Unclench your jaw. Allow yourself to just be here in this exact moment, exactly as you are, without needing to fix or change a single thing right now. Drop an affirmation in the comments below. I am ready to return home to myself. Speak those words softly, whether in writing or in your heart. Let that simple sentence be your quiet, sacred promise to your own soul as we begin this path back to you. Disconnection rarely happens in one dramatic moment. It does not arrive like a sudden, violent storm that knocks down the entire house overnight. We like to think that life breaks us in large, catastrophic events. But most of the time, the drift away from who we really are is quiet, subtle, and almost completely invisible. It happens in tiny, daily compromises that seem so insignificant in the moment that we barely even notice we are making them. Think back to the last time a close friend or colleague invited you to an event on an evening when your entire body was practically screaming for rest. You felt that heavy, unmistakable pull in your stomach, that quiet, desperate request from your mind to just stay home, put on comfortable clothes, brew a hot cup of tea, and be completely still. Every instinct you had was begging for quiet. But instead of honoring that deep inner truth, you felt the sudden panic of obligation. You worried about disappointing them. You worried about looking distant or unsupportive. So, you forced a smile, said yes, and spent 3 long hours nodding along to small talk, while secretly counting down every minute until you could finally excuse yourself and leave. In that moment, it felt like a harmless choice. It felt like just being nice, being agreeable, being a good friend. But what really happened in that room? Every single time you said an outward yes when your soul was crying out with a desperate no, you quietly betrayed your own boundaries. You told yourself that someone else's comfort was more important than your own well-being. Or think of how often you laugh at a joke that actually felt a bit mean or uncomfortable, simply because everyone else in the room was laughing. Think of how many times you agree with an opinion you secretly disagree with, just to keep the conversation smooth, calm, and conflict-free. Think of the times you softened your passion, lowered your excitement, or hid your genuine grief because you were afraid of being too much or too sensitive for the people around you. Every time you quiet your real answer to keep the peace outside, you leave a little piece of yourself behind. These are the small departures. They happen dozens of times a week, hundreds of times a year. You swallow your true voice to avoid an uncomfortable silence. You adjust your posture, your tone, your preferences, and your boundaries to fit the shape of whatever room you happen to walk into. You become a master of adaptation, a chameleon who knows exactly how to tone down their own light so that no one else feels blinded by it. At first, these tiny surrenders seem harmless. You tell yourself that you are just being flexible, adaptable, and kind. But over time, those microscopic betrayals accumulate like dust on a quiet mirror. One small departure leads to another, and another, and another. Years go by, and eventually, you wake up, look into that mirror, and realize you no longer recognize the face looking back at you. You didn't lose yourself all at once in a tragic accident. You gave yourself away, piece by tiny piece, to maintain a harmony that was never real in the first place. When you constantly abandon your truth to preserve the feelings, expectations, or approval of others, you teach your inner self a painful lesson. My feelings do not matter. My voice is not safe. Who I really am is not enough. After years of receiving that message, your inner self simply stops speaking up. The quiet nudges of intuition stop coming. The sudden bursts of joy fade away. The clear sense of what you like, what you want, and what you stand for begins to blur around the edges. You end up living on autopilot, walking through a life built entirely out of the preferences of everyone else, while your own heart sits quietly in the dark, waiting for you to come back and listen. When we begin to feel that subtle, aching distance within ourselves, our natural human instinct is rarely to stop. Sit down and gently hold that feeling. We do not welcome the quiet void with open arms. Instead, we run from it. We speed up. We fill our calendars to the absolute brim, overload our daily to-do lists, and dive headfirst into endless activity, trying desperately to outrun the silence. We run because silence is a mirror, and deep down, we are terrified of the answers, the truths, and the unhealed grief that might be waiting for us in the quiet. Notice how this constant motion sneaks into the smallest corners of your everyday life. Think of how it feels to walk into an empty house after a long, exhausting day. Before you even take off your coat, set down your bag, or take a single breath, your hand reaches out to turn on the television or play a podcast. It isn't because you actually want to watch a specific show or learn something new. It is simply because the heavy, still air of an empty room feels too immense to carry alone. You need background noise to drown out the sudden echo of your own heart. Think of what happens when you are standing in line at the grocery store, waiting for a coffee to be poured, or sitting in your car while a traffic light turns from red to green. In those tiny 5-second margins of open time, a quiet wave of discomfort begins to rise. And instantly, almost automatically, your hand reaches into your pocket for your phone. You swipe through endless feeds, scroll past bright photos of distant acquaintances, read random news headlines, or watch short, mindless videos. Anything, absolutely anything, to avoid spending 5 uninterrupted seconds alone with your own mind. We have become master builders of modern noise. We fill every single crack, pause, and quiet space in our day with constant stream after constant stream of external input. We listen to music while we shower. We listen to talk radio while we drive. And we keep screens glowing while we fall asleep. We tell ourselves that we are just staying connected, staying informed, or keeping entertained. But if we are completely honest with ourselves, it is often a soft form of escape. It is a defense mechanism built to protect us from the unbearable stillness of our own inner world. When you fill every available moment of your existence with the thoughts, opinions, sounds, and lives of others, you leave zero room for your own soft voice to speak. Your true self becomes like a soft-spoken friend, sitting quietly in the corner of a chaotic, roaring room. They have something important to tell you, something about your boundaries, your deep fatigue, your unmet needs, or your forgotten passions. But every time they open their mouth to speak, you turn up the volume on the world outside. This constant motion of avoidance comes at a heavy price. It takes an incredible amount of emotional energy to keep running from your own inner landscape. The constant busyness leaves you feeling hollow, anxious, and deeply fatigued, not because your physical body is working too hard, but because your soul is exhausted from maintaining the illusion that everything is fine. You are constantly leaning forward into the next moment, the next task, or the next distraction, completely unable to ground your feet in the present moment. Avoiding yourself does not make the underlying pain, loneliness, or confusion go away. It simply buries those feelings alive inside you, where they wait patiently for the moment the noise finally stops. The tragedy of constant avoidance is that by running away from the uncomfortable feelings, you also run away from your capacity for deep joy, peace, and self-love. You cannot selectively mute your emotions. When you quiet the sadness, you also quiet the light. Reclaiming your life requires the courage to slow down, drop your feet onto the floor, put down the distractions, and allow the quiet air to surround you once again. From the time we are very small, we begin to absorb silent rules about what it takes to be loved, accepted, and safe in this world. Long before we ever learn to articulate who we are, we watch the adults around us. Pay attention to the subtle cues of approval, and quickly figure out which parts of ourselves are welcomed and which parts cause tension. We learn very early on that being our raw, authentic self can sometimes lead to rejection, misunderstanding, or conflict. So, to protect ourselves, we start to build a role. Without even realizing it, you picked up a specific role to play on the stage of your life. Maybe you became the reliable one, the person who never complains, never asks for help, and always carries the emotional weight of everyone else without flinching. Maybe you became the high achiever, the one who measures their worth by gold stars, perfectionism, and endless accomplishments, believing that if you just work hard enough, no one can ever question your value. Or maybe you became the quiet peacemaker, the master smoother of rough edges, the person who hides their own anger, swallows their own preferences, and fixes everyone else's problems just to keep the home or workplace calm. Over time, that helpful role stops being just a temporary shield and slowly turns into heavy, rigid armor. You put it on every morning when you get out of bed, and you wear it into every single room you step into. You wear it with your partner, your family, your friends, and your co-workers. You become so skilled at wearing this armor, and people praise you for it so often, that you begin to confuse the suit of metal with the living, breathing person inside it. You start believing that you are the reliable one, are the strong one, are the one who has it all together. But armor is heavy. It is exhausting to wear metal all day long. It requires constant vigilance, endless energy, and a permanent state of tension just to hold the weight of it up. The tragic irony of armor is that while it protects you from the threat of being hurt or rejected, it also prevents anyone from ever truly seeing, touching, or knowing you. It keeps out the bad, but it also completely locks out the warmth, genuine connection, and deep intimacy that your soul craves. You sit inside that protective shell, feeling profoundly lonely, surrounded by people who love the armor, but who have no idea who is actually living inside it. Think of how much energy you spend every single day keeping up the appearance of that role. Think of the terror that strikes your heart when you think about letting the armor slip. The fear of saying, "I can't handle this," or "I don't know the answer," or "I am hurting right now and I need help." You worry that if you take off the suit, the people around you will walk away because you have convinced yourself that they only love what you do for them, not who you are when you are sitting quietly with nothing to offer. You get so focused on performing the role well that you completely lose touch with your raw, human baseline. You stop asking what you need, what you desire, or what brings you peace, and instead spend all your energy anticipating what everyone else expects you to be. You measure your life by how well you carried out the script, rather than whether the play was ever meant for you in the first place. Coming home to yourself requires the gentle, terrifying process of unbuckling that heavy armor, piece by piece. It means acknowledging that the suit served a purpose once. It kept you safe when you were young, vulnerable, or learning to navigate the world. But it is no longer serving your life today. It is okay to be tired. It is okay to not have all the answers. It is okay to be messy, flawed, and human. You do not have to earn your place on this earth by being unbreakable. You are allowed to take off the heavy metal, drop it to the floor, and let yourself breathe as you simply are. When you finally decide to slow down, put down the heavy armor, and step inside your own heart, you do not immediately encounter pure peace and light. The initial steps inward can feel intimidating, because when you turn off the outside noise, you also meet the long-forgotten rooms of yourself that you spent years locking away. You meet the shadowed parts, the quiet grief, the unresolved hurts, the raw feelings, and the painful memories that felt too heavy to hold when they first arrived. Think of the old resentment you still hold toward a former friend, a family member, or even a past version of yourself who didn't know any better. Think of the deep-seated fear of failure that makes your chest tighten whenever you try something new, or the quiet envy that flashes through your heart when you see someone else living out a life you secretly wished for yourself. Think of the unexpressed anger you swallowed to keep from making a scene, or the overwhelming sadness you quickly pushed down with work, distraction, or a forced smile, because you felt you had to be strong for everyone else. We spend an immense amount of daily energy trying to hide these difficult feelings, acting as if they belong to someone else entirely. We judge ourselves harshly for having them. We tell ourselves that we should be past this by now, that we should be happier, more forgiving, or more peaceful. We lock those emotions in the dark corners of our mind, hoping that if we ignore them long enough, they will simply vanish into thin air. But emotions do not disappear when they are ignored. They simply wait quietly in the shadows, leaking into our daily lives as unexplained fatigue, sudden anxiety, or unexpected bursts of irritation over tiny things. Swiss psychiatrist Carl Jung captured this tender, terrifying human reality with profound clarity when he observed, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." Notice how he did not say that the most terrifying thing is to fix yourself, or to change yourself, or to purify yourself. The most terrifying act is simply to look at every single part of your own experience, the beautiful and the broken, the strong and the frail, the gentle and the messy, and accept it all without judgment. It takes immense courage to sit quietly in the dark with your own uncomfortable truths. It requires you to look at your lingering fear, your messy past, your mistakes, and your unhealed pain, and soft-spokenly say, "This too belongs to my story." You cannot truly return home to yourself if you keep half of your house locked and hidden in the dark. A true home is not a polished showroom where everything is perfect and clean. It is a living, breathing sanctuary that holds space for your entire humanity. The shadowed parts of you are not bad, broken, or irredeemable. They are simply the hurt, neglected, or overwhelmed parts of your soul that were forced to survive in the cold for far too long. They do not need to be banished or fought against. They are just waiting for you to open the door, extend a hand, and bring them back into the warmth of your own compassion. Your mind, body, and spirit are constantly trying to communicate with you, acting as a compassionate internal guidance system that knows when the gap between who you truly are and how you are currently living has grown too wide. When you live in a state of long-term disconnect, your inner self cannot use loud words to grab your attention. Instead, it begins to send subtle, daily signals, gentle alarms designed to wake you up to the reality that you have strayed too far from your center. The first and most common signal is a persistent, bone-deep exhaustion. It is a heavy fatigue that settles into your limbs and hangs over your mind like a thick cloud. You try going to bed earlier, taking weekends to rest, or drinking another cup of coffee in the afternoon. But a full night of sleep never seems to fix it. That is because it isn't your physical body that is tired. It is your spirit that is completely drained from the constant effort of pretending, performing, and hiding behind armor. It takes an extraordinary amount of energy to carry a life that does not fit. And your body eventually tries to force you to slow down by pulling the plug on your physical reserves. Another unmistakable signal of disconnection is a quiet, creeping emotional numbness. You might reach a major milestone, receive good news, or sit at a beautiful celebration with people who love you. Yet inside, you feel almost nothing. It feels as though you are standing on the outside of your own experience, looking through a window, watching someone else live your life while you simply go through the motions. You nod, you smile, and you say the right things, but the genuine warmth of joy barely touches you. This numbness is not a lack of feeling. It is a protective wall your heart built when the weight of unexpressed emotions became too heavy to hold. Disconnection also reveals itself through sudden, disproportionate reactions to small everyday moments. You might find yourself snapping at someone you care about over a minor miscommunication, or feeling a wave of intense irritation when a key is misplaced, an item is dropped, or a plan changes by 5 minutes. In those moments, the sharp sting of frustration feels far bigger than the actual event. That sudden surge of emotion is not really about the misplaced key or the minor delay. It is the overflow of a cup that has been full for months. It is the pressure of every swallowed boundary, every suppressed emotion, and every ignored need finally finding a crack in the dam to escape. You might also notice a quiet, lingering sense of resentment creeping into your relationships. You begin to feel bitter toward the people around you, not because they are doing anything wrong, but because they are asking things of you that you no longer have the capacity to give. You feel resentful of their requests, their time, and their needs, forgetting that you were the one who taught them you would always say yes. This resentment is a clear signal that your inner boundaries have been completely eroded, leaving you feeling exposed, depleted, and taken for granted. These signals, the heavy exhaustion, the emotional numbness, the sharp irritability, and the quiet bitterness, are not signs that you are broken, bad, or failing at life. They are not flaws to be hidden away or punished. They are gentle, persistent warnings from your inner world, calling out to you in the dark. They are your soul's way of tapping you on the shoulder and saying, "Stop running. Pay attention. You have wandered too far away from home, and it is time to turn around." Recognizing these signals is the very first step toward healing. Instead of judging yourself when the fatigue or irritation arrives, try greeting those feelings with quiet curiosity and soft compassion. Ask yourself what your body is trying to protect you from, or what your spirit is desperately trying to ask for. When you stop fighting the signals and start listening to what they are trying to teach you, the path back to your center begins to open up right beneath your feet. Reconnecting with yourself does not require a complete, overwhelming life makeover. You do not need to quit your job tomorrow, move to a distant town, or radically overhaul your entire daily routine to find your way back to your center. The journey home does not begin with massive, sweeping changes on the outside. It begins with a quiet, revolutionary shift on the inside. It begins with the gentle art of listening. For so long, you have trained yourself to listen to everything else first. You listen to the demands of your schedule, the expectations of your family, the endless noise of the world, and the silent pressure to keep everyone around you comfortable. You have become an expert at hearing what the world wants from you. But in the process, your own internal voice was pushed into the background, becoming a distant whisper you barely notice. The art of listening within means turning that attention back around. Imagine treating yourself with the exact same tender patience, kindness, and grace that you would naturally offer to a dear friend who has been away on a long, hard journey. If a loved one walked into your home exhausted, overwhelmed, and carrying a heavy heart, you wouldn't tell them to hurry up, fix it immediately, or pretend they were fine. You would sit them down, hand them a warm drink, look them in the eyes, and ask, "How are you really doing?" You would give them the space to speak without interrupting, judging, or trying to fix them. Listening within means offering that exact same sacred space to yourself. When a sudden feeling of overwhelm, tightness in your chest, or quiet anxiety rises up during your afternoon, notice your usual instinct. Your habit might be to immediately push it down, distract yourself, rationalize it away, or scold yourself for feeling that way. Instead of doing any of those things, try simply pausing. Take a single, intentional breath. Drop your awareness into your body and ask yourself one soft, simple question. What do I need right now in this exact moment? Sit with that question for a moment without rushing to answer it with your head. Let your body speak. Sometimes the answer will be surprisingly simple. Sometimes your inner self is not asking for a grand solution. It is just asking for 5 quiet minutes, sitting on the edge of your bed with your eyes closed, away from screens and demands. Sometimes it is stepping outside to feel the cool air against your face and taking 3 deep breaths. Sometimes it is getting up to drink a fresh glass of water, letting yourself cry out a quiet tear you've been holding back, or speaking a clear, honest no to an extra request you simply do not have the energy to handle. When you first begin this practice, the answers might feel faint or uncertain. You might feel a bit silly or out of touch because you haven't flexed this muscle in a very long time. That is completely okay. Self-awareness is a relationship, and like any relationship, it takes time, consistency, and gentle repetition to build closeness again. Every single time you pause, ask what you need, and honor that small, quiet truth. You send a clear message to your deepest self. I hear you. I see you. You matter to me. Listening within is not about having all the answers or controlling how you feel. It is about allowing yourself to feel whatever is actually there, without shame. It is about choosing to be a comforting presence for yourself, even when things are messy. Returning home to who you are starts by honoring those tiny, quiet truths, one soft, breath at a time, as you begin to listen closer to your internal world. A quiet and profound clarity begins to settle over your heart. You start to notice how much heavy weight you have been carrying across the years that never actually belonged to you in the first place. Without realizing it, we go through life like collectors, gathering emotional baggage, standards, and obligations from everyone around us, mistaking those heavy loads for our own true path. Think of how much of your current exhaustion comes from trying to live up to old standards of success that were handed down to you by your parents, your teachers, or your culture. You might be pushing yourself to maintain a certain career pace, a specific lifestyle, or a polished image, not because it brings you deep joy, but because you learned long ago that achieving those specific things was the only way to earn praise, safety, and love. You carry the invisible timeline of when you should have bought a home, when you should be married, or where your finances should be, measuring your real, living self against a rigid rule book that you didn't even write. Think of how often you absorb the unhealed anxieties, moods, and demands of the people around you. You carry the weight of keeping a parent happy, the pressure of fixing a partner's mood, or the heavy, overwhelming news of a world that tells you to be terrified every single day. You walk through your day feeling weighed down, completely unaware that half the emotional bricks in your backpack were placed there by hands other than your own. Coming home to yourself requires a willing, brave step into the process of unburdening. It means standing quietly in the middle of your life, looking at your daily habits, your draining commitments, and your long-held internal rules, and asking with soft honesty, is this nourishing my spirit, or is it simply draining my life away? It takes immense emotional courage to look at an expectation you have carried for 10 years and say, this is not mine anymore. Shedding what is no longer yours is not an act of selfishness or cruelty. It is an act of deep reverence for your own finite energy. It means realizing that you cannot live a life meant for someone else and still have room to inhabit your own truth. You are allowed to outgrow old versions of yourself that relied on outside approval to feel safe. You are allowed to put down the need to manage everyone else's emotions, the need to explain your choices to people who are determined not to understand, and the heavy demand to be perfect at every moment. Swiss psychiatrist Carl Jung reflected on this exact, liberating transformation toward genuine authenticity when he noted, "I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become." Notice the profound freedom tucked inside those words. You are not defined by the expectations that were placed on you as a child. You are not defined by the mistakes you made when you were just trying to survive, nor by the roles you took on to keep the peace in rooms that didn't know how to hold you. You are not bound to carry the anxieties, burdens, or stories of the past for one more second if they do not serve the living, breathing soul you are today. You have full permission to put down those heavy bags of expectations. Imagine what it would feel like to unclench your fingers, loosen your shoulders, and simply let those weights fall to the floor. Imagine how light your step becomes when you are only carrying what is genuine, what is real, and what truly belongs to you. As you shed the layers of who you thought you had to be, the radiant truth of who you actually are finally has room to step into the light. The journey back to yourself is ultimately about rebuilding self-trust. When you spend years overriding your instincts, ignoring your fatigue, and prioritizing outside validation over inner peace, your connection with yourself naturally frays. Every time you ignored that soft internal signal begging for rest, every time you said yes to someone else while your stomach twisted in a desperate no, and every time you minimized your own hurt just to keep the peace, you made a tiny, silent promise to yourself and broke it. Over time, that inner bond breaks down. You stop trusting your own intuition, you second-guess your simplest decisions, and you constantly look outside of yourself for reassurance, permission, or a map to tell you how to feel. Rebuilding that broken bond takes time, deep patience, and quiet consistency. You cannot rebuild self-trust through a single grand gesture or overnight realization. Self-trust is built in the quiet, unglamorous, everyday moments, in the microscopic choices that no one else sees. You rebuild self-trust in very simple ways by honoring the small promises you make to yourself. Think of how you would treat a friend whose trust you are trying to earn back. You wouldn't make wild, sweeping commitments you can't keep. You would start small. You would show up when you said you would show up, and you would keep your word. The same is true for your relationship with your own soul. Rebuilding self-trust looks like keeping a simple commitment to step away from your desk for a short walk after work, because you promised your body fresh air. It looks like keeping your boundary when you say your workday is finished, instead of opening one more assignment out of guilt. It looks like letting yourself rest when you are weary, without spending the entire time mentally punishing yourself for not being productive. It means learning to validate your own emotional reality before asking anyone else if your feelings are allowed. When sadness, disappointment, or boundary crossing occurs, self-trust means pausing to say, "I hear you, and your feelings make complete sense," rather than immediately assuming you must be overreacting or being dramatic. It means allowing your intuition to have a seat at the table when making choices about your life, rather than polling 5 different people to get permission for a choice your body already knows is right. Every single time you listen to your inner signal and act in alignment with it, you place a brick in the foundation of your self-trust. With each small promise kept, the inner quiet shifts. The background noise of self-doubt begins to soften. You stop feeling like a feather blown around by the opinions, demands, and moods of the world outside. Instead, you begin to feel grounded again, anchored into your own center, rooted in your own worth, and knowing with absolute certainty that no matter what happens around you, no matter what storms arise or what challenges step into your path, you have your own back. Coming home to yourself is not a single, magical destination where you arrive once and remain unchanged forever. It is not a fixed finish line where all your confusion disappears and life suddenly becomes permanently effortless. Returning to yourself is a quiet, continuous, and sacred practice of returning. Day after day, choice after choice, breath after breath. It is the brave decision to step out of the loud, reactive cycle of surviving for the world and step into the soft, grounded space of living from the inside out. For so much of your life, you have lived from the outside in. You trained your eyes to look out into the world first, constantly searching for signals of how you were supposed to act, how you were supposed to feel, and who you were supposed to be. You started every choice by asking the heavy, exhausting question, what do they want from me? What will make them stay? What will keep the peace? You shaped your identity around the expectations, opinions, and moods of everyone else, hoping that if you performed well enough on the outside, you would eventually feel quiet and secure on the inside. Living from the inside out completely transforms that relationship. It means gently taking your awareness off the world outside and bringing it back to the quiet center of your own heart. When a new choice, an invitation, or a life decision arrives, you no longer look to the room for permission. Instead, you pause, close your eyes, and ask the softest, most honest question of all. What feels true for me right now? You begin to honor your inner voice before you seek outside input. You check your internal weather, your energy, your boundaries, your deep values, and you let that inner reality guide your outer steps. When you live from the inside out, you learn to stand comfortably in your own shoes. You no longer try to walk like someone else, speak like someone else, or measure your worth by a life script that was never meant for you. You accept the full, beautiful complexity of your own humanity. You make peace with your flaws, honor your quiet strengths, and hold space for the parts of your story that are still messy, unrefined, or in the process of healing. You stop viewing yourself as a project that constantly needs to be fixed, upgraded, or approved of by others. Instead, you begin to see yourself as a home, a safe, warm sanctuary that you are learning to inhabit fully. Think of how much lighter your days become when you no longer need the entire world to agree with your choices. You can let people hold their opinions without taking them on as your truth. You can let others experience their disappointments without rushing in to fix them at the expense of your own peace. You begin to realize that your worth was never tied to how much you could carry, how much you could produce, or how perfectly you could perform. Your worth is quiet, inherent, and unchanging. You are not lost. You never truly were. The true path back to your peace was never hidden out there in the world, in someone else's approval, in the next achievement, or in a far-off milestone. It was always right here, waiting patiently for you to stop running. Drop your heavy armor, take a deep breath, and step back inside yourself. As we draw this journey to a close, take a moment to pause right where you are. Allow the noise of the world to fade into the background for just a few precious minutes. You have walked through the illusions of being lost, faced the quiet departures from your inner truth, and recognized the heavy armor of expectations you were never meant to carry for a lifetime. You have looked gently at the shadowed parts of your soul and listened to the persistent signals your body and mind have been sending you. You have begun the quiet work of shedding what is no longer yours, building self-trust brick by brick, and choosing to live from the inside out. Now, as you stand at the threshold of your daily life, it is time to ground all of these reflections into a simple, living truth. Returning home to yourself is not a single, dramatic transformation that happens overnight, nor is it a grand performance meant for the world to see. It is a quiet, ongoing series of soft returns. It is found in the ordinary, unglamorous moments of your day when you choose to listen to your inner voice instead of overriding it. It is found when you honor your fatigue and allow yourself to rest without a single ounce of guilt. It is found when you say an honest, gentle no to a request that drains your spirit, and when you allow yourself to feel your real emotions without rushing to fix, conceal, or judge them. Every single time you choose your own inner peace over outside validation, you take another step back into your own sanctuary. You prove to your deepest self that you are no longer willing to abandon your heart to keep the peace in rooms that do not know how to hold your truth. You begin to understand that you do not need to seek outside of yourself for the path forward. The path was never out there in someone else's approval, in a milestone, or in a perfect future version of you. The path has always been right here, waiting patiently under the noise for you to simply stop running and turn your awareness back within. You are whole. You are worthy. You are allowed to take up space in your own life exactly as you are, flawed, growing, healing, and beautifully human. You do not need to carry the world on your shoulders to earn your right to rest, to be loved, or to exist. The heavy metal armor can stay on the floor. The expectations that never belonged to you can remain behind. You are finally free to inhabit your own skin, to walk in your own shoes, and to live a life that feels authentic from the inside out. Before you step away from this space and carry on with your day, let us seal this reflection together with a shared promise. Take one long, deep breath in, fill your lungs with fresh air, and let it out with a soft sigh. Drop your shoulders, unclench your jaw, and let this moment settle into your chest. In the comments below, leave your final affirmation for this journey. I am home within myself, and I choose my peace. Write those words as a quiet vow to your own heart. Let them serve as a gentle anchor that you can return to whenever the world grows too loud.